Hello, it is May 23rd, 2024, and this is Alan Zundel reporting for Political Dharma. We've been covering, or I've been covering, there's just me here, I've been covering the presidential campaigns of non-major party candidates in this election year, particularly focusing on those candidates and parties which seem to have the potential for having the largest impact on the presidential election this year. I've got two topics this episode. The first one being the continuing issue of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s exclusion from the recently set up presidential debates. The second one being an update on what's been going on in the Libertarian Party preceding their national convention, which is happening this weekend. And then finally, a couple of brief updates on the Cornel West independent presidential campaign and the Green Party's choosing of delegates for its national convention a little bit later in the summer. All right, but first, I've got to make a couple of corrections from my last episode, one of which I seem to say, and I reviewed it, and I certainly did say, that it took 100 signatures to get on the New Jersey ballot because the Kennedy campaign had recently succeeded in their effort to get enough signatures to be on the ballot there. And several of you corrected me, said it was 800 signatures, and you were right. I knew it was 800. I looked at my notes. I started to say 700, and I looked and said 100. I don't know how I got to it, but I reviewed it, and it certainly sounded like I said 100. So another one of those glitches coming from the mouth of an old man who means to say one thing and says another instead. Kind of trivial point now that the ballot access in New Jersey is over. But more importantly, I also said that the difference in time between the East Coast and West Coast was that the West Coast is 3 hours later. Actually, it's 3 hours earlier. So if you're going to watch online the Libertarian Party's national convention this weekend from the West Coast, it will be 3 hours earlier here broadcast. So instead of an event at 3:30 there, it would be at 12:30, just past noon, half past noon here on the West Coast. And probably all of you could figure that out for yourselves, but I wanted to make sure I clarified that, because on this show we always correct ourselves when it's pointed out, and sometimes even when it's not. Okay, let's start off with the issue of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s exclusion from the presidential debates. As I reported in my last show, the Biden and Trump campaigns negotiated with each other to set up two presidential debates, one about a month from now on June 27th, and the other September 10th, I believe. It's in September, later in the year. Now, they got CNN to sponsor the first debate and ABC to sponsor the second debate, and CNN and ABC have adopted criteria for how they're going to decide who gets to be included in the presidential debate, even though news reports say that the Biden campaign in particular made it clear they don't want Robert F. Kennedy on the debate stage at all, despite their having this veneer of objective criteria. The Center for Competitive Democracy and the More Voters Choice Fund, along with American Values 2024, sent a letter to the Biden and Trump campaigns and CNN objecting to how they are using these criteria for getting in the presidential debate. Now, the Center for Competitive Democracy, which wrote the letter, I don't know much about it. It's founded apparently in 2005 by Oliver Hall to remove barriers to greater electoral competition. Now, I don't know anything about Oliver Hall, but I did note that he has the same name as a lawyer for the Libertarian Party who's involved in the convention this year. So probably the same person, I would imagine. Now, the More Voter Choice Fund, their spokesperson is Teresa Amato. I know a little more about her because she was one of the principal campaign people in the Ralph Nader presidential campaigns of 2000 and 2004. And finally, the American Values 2024 Super PAC was set up specifically to help bolster Kennedy's campaign, although as a super PAC, because of the campaign finance laws, they cannot coordinate directly with the Kennedy campaign and what they do, which has already caused them some problems when they got involved in gathering signatures for getting Kennedy on the ballot. So on Monday, this letter was sent out, and those three organizations objected to the way CNN was setting up these criteria for getting in the debates. They pointed out that the Federal Election Commission has regulations which require anybody sponsoring a presidential debate to have pre-established objective criteria for inclusion. Otherwise, this can be considered, their sponsoring of a debate limited to particular candidates can be considered a contribution to those candidates' campaigns. So they can't just treat it as a neutral news event if they're arbitrarily excluding somebody like Kennedy. And they adopted the same kind of criteria that have been used by the Commission on Presidential Debates, which is not sponsoring this year. The Biden and Trump campaigns decided to manage this themselves without the participation of the Commission on Presidential Debates, which itself is controlled by the Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committee, so it's not really a neutral party either. Back in the past, it was the League of Women Voters, but parties decided they didn't even want to deal with them. So where was I at? The Federal Elections Commission has these criteria. The letter from these groups was objecting to that. Now, CNN did have a rejoinder. They said that they adopted this criteria of having to get on the ballot in enough states to get 270 electoral votes, which means they would have a hypothetical chance of winning a majority in the Electoral College, and they had to get 15% from at least 4 national polls between the dates of, I've got it here somewhere and it's not on the top of my mind. Anyway, maybe I'll hit it down below. 15%, 4 of 12 national polls as designated by CNN. They designated a set of institutions, 12 institutions that would be offering polls that they would find acceptable. And so that was their criteria. Now, those organizations were objecting that some of those criteria were not very well set, because if you're saying you're including organizations like ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, if they're sponsoring, if they promulgate a poll that's not professionally conducted and it's very biased, that could be considered one of the polls that are going to count towards whether or not Kennedy can select from those to prove he's got enough support. They made that objection. I don't find it a very compelling objection, because there will be other polls from those organizations that Kennedy can choose from. I don't think they're all biased. In fact, I don't think they intend to use any that are overtly biased or very unprofessionally conducted. It's just that, as some people have pointed out in comments on my video, even professionally conducted polls can be biased in ways that are hard to see, because most of them don't poll a large enough sample to show how this could go nationally, especially with candidates who have very slim support. So they have to weight it for different groups in the population. That is, they give more emphasis to the answers from some kind of subpopulations to give them a better representation, a better sense of what those groups actually think, and that can skew the results in some ways. So these are professionally determined criteria. I don't find that as compelling an objection as some of the other ones. As I said, Kennedy could find enough good polls, and in fact, I'll get to that in a minute. So they also said that they objected to the ballot access requirements, because neither Trump nor Biden will have received officially the nomination of their parties until the national conventions happen later in the summer. So CNN's response to this, in Newsweek on Tuesday, a spokesperson said, quote, "The law in virtually every state provides that the nomination of a state-recognized political party will be allowed ballot access without petition, as the presumptive nominees of their parties, both Biden and Trump, will satisfy this requirement." Okay, good enough, but I'll have more to say about that, how presumptive nominee might apply to Kennedy. But I also want to point out as an aside that Joe Biden is not yet qualified to be on the ballot in Ohio. Now, that one state wouldn't exclude him from the debate, but that statement that virtually every state has a law in the books, that's not true. In Ohio, they require a candidate to apply to be on the ballot by August, I forget what, but earlier in August, and the National Convention for the Democratic Party is not going to be held till later in August. And recently there was an article in the Columbia Dispatch from Ohio saying that the Ohio legislative leaders said there's no chance that they're going to have legislation to allow Biden to get on the ballot. So that will have to be pursued by other means, such as a lawsuit on the part of the Democratic Party. And they said part of the reason was due to hyper-partisanship within their legislature, which rings true in this era of hyper-partisanship in general. Okay, but now on RFK, they had this to say, quote, "The mere application for ballot access does not guarantee that he will appear on the ballot in any state," end quote. First of all, I'd point out that he hasn't just applied to be on the ballot, he's gathered the signatures to be on the ballot, or he's been nominated by political parties in some states, and those parties are qualified for the ballot. So there will be states in which he is could be presumed by the same logic to be on the ballot. They might have to verify that he's got enough signatures to actually get verified, because the states aren't going to verify all the signatures in all those states before the June 20th deadline to qualify to be in this 27th, the debate on the June 27th. So if you presume that Kennedy has enough signatures to get on the ballot, and he's the candidate of political parties in some states, by the time the June 20th deadline rolls around, I think there's a very good chance he can prove that he should be considered a presumptive ballot candidate, ballot qualified candidate in enough states to show that he could get electoral college majority. Now, if they don't recognize that and they continue to consider the major party candidates as presumptive nominees, I think that would be very hard for them to defend. If there was a lawsuit, it probably would drag on and wouldn't affect the presidential election, and I'm not sure how far it could get anyway, but FEC, the Federal Election Commission, might fine them or something, or find that CNN had a, do a campaign finance report or something, but even that I think is unlikely. What they're trying to do, not bring a lawsuit, they haven't brought a lawsuit, they're just complaining and making this dispute public so the voters can make up their minds and maybe have pressure on CNN to actually include Kennedy, because there's good reasons for saying that he is as qualified as Trump and Biden are, according to CNN's criteria for getting on the getting ballot access in enough states to have that hypothetical majority in the Electoral College. So let's turn back to the requirement about getting on enough polls. So they say he's got to get on 4 of these polls from these 12 organizations that they've approved of. And there's been various complaints about this, some in the comments on my show or that have been online in general, and some coming from these organizations. But first of all, there's the accusation of bias in the polling. Now, like they undercount independents or other groups that are important to Kennedy's support, or say young people. The younger voter is, the more likely they are to vote for Kennedy because of their weighting process. Now, I haven't had the time yet to scrutinize the various polls in question. I don't think this is the strongest argument of the pack, and it does require some expertise in polling to be able to really make an informed judgment of that. I don't think I have the required expertise, although I probably know more about it than the average layperson, having been a political scientist. But I'm going to set that aside for the moment because I think they do have stronger arguments for Kennedy's case. Another one is that the sponsoring organizations could have, as I said, they could, any old poll. The counter argument, of course, is that, well, there's plenty of polls between those dates from other organizations that are better respected, such as Quinnipiac University or Monmouth University, that Kennedy could choose from. So there should be enough to do that. So there's that. Now, the other issue, though, is the one that I think is most compelling, is that Kennedy may actually already be very close to meeting that requirement for having a 15% qualification, 15% support in 4 polls from the organizations that they have named. The Kennedy campaign put out a list of polls where they seem to have this, and 2 of them are from 3 of them, maybe. I think 3. They say 2, but when I looked at it, I saw 3. 3 of those polls already have Kennedy at more than 15%. There was a Quinnipiac poll. That's one of the organizations CNN is saying they would accept polling results from. That was held from April 18th to 22nd, and that's the deadline. The parameters for the dates in which CNN would consider polls is March 13th to June 20th, and this Quinnipiac poll was held April 18th to 22nd, which is after March, before June, and Kennedy got 16% in that poll. Then Monmouth University, April 18th to 22nd, they had a poll, and it came out with 18% for RFK. And finally, CNN itself sponsored a poll between April 18th and the 23rd, which found Kennedy came in at 16%. Now, I don't know for sure if those polls included other candidates, and if the CNN criteria, they'll say they haven't really made this clear yet, but when they do the polling, do they have to include all the candidates who are running, all the candidates who have any significant level of support? More specifically, if you do a poll that's just Trump, Biden, and Kennedy, Kennedy will come in better than if you do a poll that includes Jill Stein from the Green Party and Cornel West, because they poll a little bit support from those people who are not going to vote for Trump or Biden. And there, Kennedy is usually just a little bit less. So are they going to see those polls? You're looking at a question which didn't include Stein and West, or are they going to say they're okay? I don't know that, haven't found that out yet. But on the face of it, it looks like they already qualify, and they say, and Ballot Access News says, that they already qualified in at least 2 polls. And then just today, as reported in Ballot Access News, Marquette University Law School released a poll that showed RFK at 17% support. And that one included Stein and West, according to Ballot Access News. So that would make at least 3, possibly 4, that Kennedy already has met the criteria in polling support from voters. And one more I got for you, that just recently, yesterday, Quinnipiac released another poll that was conducted from May 16th through the 20th that found RFK at 14% in his how many voters said they would vote for him. I want to point out, in those polls, the usual margin of error is around 2.5–3%, something like that. So you could easily argue that a 14% polling result, when you consider the margin of error, could be a 15% polling result. So those there's good reasons to believe that Kennedy's going to get enough polls to show 15% in those, and I'm not sure how that they're going to get around that one. So in those 2 cases, I think Kennedy will be able to make a strong argument that he should be included in the presidential debates. It'd be up to CNN to try to justify it, and the more they publicize these issues and their arguments, the more it should become apparent to voters, assuming the media covers this fairly, that Kennedy really should be in the debate. And a majority of voters are already saying they would like him to be in the debate because he's got a very strong name. He's polling pretty strongly for a non-major party candidate, and people deserve to hear what he has to say. Okay, so much for that issue, and we'll see how that develops over time. Second, Libertarian Party National Convention, as I said, it will be from Friday to Sunday on this weekend. Actually, it started today, Thursday, with some pre-convention committee meetings and preparing for the convention, and then welcoming delegates, things like that. And it will extend through Monday with wrap-up sessions. But the primary, the official convention itself will be, and their main events will be from Friday, tomorrow, through Sunday. They're going to have Robert F. Kennedy speaking from 3:30 to 4:30 tomorrow, Friday, Pacific time, which is 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific time here. Now, what did I just say? So that's 3:30 to 4:30 Eastern time in Washington, D.C., and 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific time here. I think I may have garbled that already. They're going to have their debate between the Libertarian Party candidates vying for the nomination of the party for their presidential nomination on Saturday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern time, which is 3 to 4:30 Pacific time, followed by Donald Trump Saturday evening, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern time, which will be 5 to 7 p.m. here on the West Coast. And then after Trump, or actually, I think before Trump. No, it's before Trump. Why did I write it this way? Oh no, presidential debate, and then Trump. And then finally on Sunday, the party will be choosing its presidential and vice presidential nominees. Okay, so what I want to add to this, a couple of things here, is that there's been apparently a lot of internal factional struggles within the Libertarian Party. I see this reported primarily in Third Party Watch, which seems to be almost entirely devoted to the Libertarian Party, and the Independent Political Report has been covering this as well, sometimes Ballot Access News, but not quite as much. There's all kind of fights going on within the party, particularly around important issues such as credentialing of delegates to the National Convention. There's very high dissatisfaction with the officers in the National Committee of the party who gained control in the 2022 convention and have been trying to select hand-picked delegates that are approved by the Mises Caucus. It's a caucus within the party that's trying to take it in a different direction. A lot of pushback against the Mises Caucus and those national officers. There's going to be a big fight over who the officers will be for the next 2 years. And also, this may impact which delegates actually get to participate in the convention. They tried to stack the deck in favor of their candidates, but there may be, and I don't know enough about the internal dynamics to say anything for sure about this, but there may be a lot of delegates who come in with a grudge against the Mises Caucus who want somebody different. Now, that somebody different was probably going to be a different candidate of the Libertarian Party candidates running, but we have the possibility that they may take a more pragmatic view of the nomination and a less ideological view, which usually third parties try to stay pure to their ideology, because what else do they have? But here they have an opportunity, if they wanted to, since Kennedy's going to be there, they could have talks with him and they could nominate him if enough delegates get on board as a way of sticking their finger in the eye of the Mises Caucus. Who knows? Just raising that as some kind of remote possibility, I don't get the impression that's likely, but if that did happen, if they did nominate Kennedy, he would be the Libertarian Party candidate, access to a whole bunch of states' ballots. I think somewhere around 30 or so they're at now, somewhat better than 30, but that would certainly help Kennedy qualify for those debates because they are qualified parties to put someone on the ballot in those states. And if Kennedy's that nominee, this could really help him getting in the debates. And there may be some libertarians who want to see that happen as a way not only of trying to break the two-party system, trying to put a crack in it, but also a way of helping the Libertarian Party gain access to public funding for the presidential campaigns this year and next year, next time around, 4 years from now. If they can get 5% or better in the voting results in November, they have access to some public funding, which could be a major help to that party. So I'll be tuning in to some of that convention and give you a report on it next week sometime to let you know what was going on there, what happened. As I said, I don't have a lot of insight to the Libertarian Party. I'm not closely aligned with them ideologically, but I have been trying to watch some of the reports coming out, and it seems like this convention could be kind of contentious. It's not unusual for any party, let alone third parties. So to close up here, which is going to be a pretty long show for these updates, Cornel West, just today, he announced that his Justice for All party qualified for the ballot, getting enough signatures in North Carolina, which brings his total to 7 states. And I think all those states he's been verified in, either the signatures he gathered as an independent candidate have already been verified by that state, the state in question, or he's the nominee of most of the states actually, he's the nominee of a qualified political party. So that's a long way from getting him in the debates or getting him a lot of attention, but he continues to go on picking up states here and there. We'll see how he does as he goes forward. And the Green Party is also going to be having a national convention, but no time soon. On their website, they say it's July 11th through 14th, and I'm going to believe that. Wikipedia and Ballotpedia say it's in August. I'd rather believe the Green Party about when their convention is going to be. Maybe they changed the date from a tentative debate. They're going to have a virtual debate July 11th through 14th, and the delegate selection process is ongoing right now. Various states are choosing their delegates to the National Convention. Those delegates will choose their presidential nominee. Jill Stein is getting like 99.5% of the delegates so far, which is not unexpected. She's a 2-time presidential candidate of the party. A lot of party people like Jill Stein, and there's been accusations they're manipulating the process to her benefit, but that wouldn't even be necessary, in my opinion, for her to get those delegate votes to be the nominee. So to no surprise of anybody, Jill Stein looks like she's the likely nominee of the Green Party. And of course, the Green Party is one of the few that may get more than a fraction of a percent of the vote come November. That's it for this week. Boy, that was a lot. Hope you got something out of it. If you did, like this video, share it with other people. Subscribe if you want to continue this journey with me. If you feel like helping out with some money, no amount is too small, and certainly no amount is too large. You can go to the politicaldharma.com website, which doesn't have much else on it, but a button to click to donate some money through a secure PayPal link. Tending to get to that, but as I said in other episodes, if you're familiar with this, we've been looking for houses. We just sold our house in Oregon, but we have not yet found a house to buy in California, which my wife and I are planning to do. So we can still live in our house for a few weeks before we have to make the move. And my hand, which, as those of you know, I had some surgery on my thumb and was having trouble writing notes or manipulating my keyboard and my mouse to do these videos, do graphics on them and things like that. My hand is doing a lot better. So thank all of you for your well wishes. I'm able to write. It's getting stronger all the time. Still a little soreness, stiffness, and I get tired out easily with the thumb, but coming along pretty well. And next week I should be doing a regular show, at least one, maybe a few over the coming weeks. Thanks for tuning in, and hope you come back.